notch as I strolled without a care, cause I'm going down the road to a brand new place, and I'll get there with a smile on my face. Yeah, so lift me up, I'm moving on, singing and dancing while I play my song.
There we are. Well, that took a while. I'm going to do my little commercial because it was just turning black. Well, hello, everybody. It was black today. That's so weird. Hey, I'm Tina over here at your Backup Plan app. That took me off guard for a second there. My little edit of me coming on stream was not working. So, hi, I'm Tina. I am the creator and developer of your Backup Plan app, and I'm a best-selling author of In the Blink of an Eye, and I'm a financial advisor and emergency preparedness coach as well. We are on all podcast platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. We're everywhere under your Backup Plan. We talk about real life stories here on this page, and they're amazing people's talking about their life-changing events in their journey and the tragedies, the trauma, the sickness, and accidents. It's in the blink of the eye, guys. It's how quickly something happens and it changes your life, and something unexpected happens and it hits you hard. And that's what I'm here for. There's sometimes no 5-minute evacuation notices, sometimes no time at all to make the right choices and the right decisions and the right emotions and to be in the right mental state of mind. We don't have choices in most cases. It just happens. And are we prepared? So here at your Backup Plan, we created an app that would organize all of your details in case of any medical emergency, sudden death, or unexpected tragedy, to avoid all of the tremendous stress for you and your loved ones. Your Backup Plan app, at the edge of your fingertips, is there to help you, guide you, and ensure that you have your life's puzzle pieces in one place in this complicated world that we live in today. And that brings me to our wonderful guest today, Lisa Haycock from the UK, just outside of London. So welcome, Lisa. You know, I put this package together for you. I found this quote and I thought, oh my goodness, it resonated with me with you guys today. I'm unsure which pain is worse, the shock of what happened or the ache for what never will. And it was an unknown quote. I would love if I could put my name on that because it's just so perfect. So thank you for coming to our show today, Lisa, to talk about coping with grief. I know you've been through so much of your own and you're here to help others. And I'm so very thankful for having you come on our show today. So thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for coming on. Where did all of this start for you?
Well, so first of all, you say I live just outside of London. I'm clearly not from here, so that'll throw someone off. So I'm from Seattle, which will come into this story. So it all started for me in 2018. I actually had very little loss growing up. I mean, my grandma and my aunt passed away when I was younger, but I was younger. And so I was quite fortunate. I hadn't had any real major losses in my life. And in 2018, in January, my niece passed away from a long illness. She was in her 30s. And about a week later, I got that call. I'm in the UK. My mom says, "Can we talk?" And that just never is great, right? And she explained to me that my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer. And it was like my world, it just opened up and swallowed me whole. So at that point, I was going back, I'd helped a bit. And then I said to my husband at the time, I need to quit my job and I need to go live back in Seattle and take care of my dad, but also take care of my mom. My mom and dad had been married for 50 plus years. They were, they were soulmates. And watching my mom try and care for my dad and grieve the loss, it's the anticipatory grief, the grief that we're anticipating that my dad is going to pass away. And so we're grieving all the time. We're grieving many things, as my dad is, and my family. And so I quit my job and I went back to the States to take care of my dad, and was there for 8 months until he passed away. And then I came back to the States, or came back to the UK, and found another job and trying to deal with my grief and the trauma and the exhaustion of being the caregiver. And a few months later, my mom came to visit. It was great to have my mom here, but it was without my dad, so it was strange. It was just like it didn't seem right, but it was so good to have her. And we traveled around and we went and did things that she wanted to see. And she stayed for 2 months. And at the airport, we hugged. I tried to keep my life. Yeah, I tried to keep it together, right? I'm trying to keep it together, not cry, because my mom is leaving by herself and walking away. She's crying. And I did not realize that would be the last time I would hug my mom or touch my mom.
Really?
Yeah.
That'd be like, you'd be like going like this, trying to not let it get
Yeah.
overpowering, right?
Yeah. Well, and I was saying goodbye to my mom, but my mom passed away a few months later in her sleep.
Wow.
And I didn't realize. So 14 months after my dad died, my mom died. And I was 4,000 miles away, but we talked every day and she wasn't answering her messages. I was calling, I was messaging. I thought maybe she's away, maybe she's doing something. Tried again, tried again. And then I just knew. And so I started calling my brother and my mom's best friends and saying, get over there, get over there. Something's not right. And my mom had passed away in her sleep. Her legs were crossed. She was watching TV. So she went the way she always said she wanted to go. But the shock and devastation. So my dad was the anticipatory grief and my mom was the sudden loss. And again, my whole world opened up and swallowed me whole. Now I'm back on a plane going back to Seattle, and I was supposed to go on a cruise with my mom. And instead, I was burying my mom. And it was just,
Sorry, do you think she wanted it like that?
she always said that she wanted to, go quick and all of that. And she certainly did. But she was full of life, even though she was so sad and grieving my dad, that yes, I believe that, she did die of a broken heart. But the reality was she was still like, I'm not sitting around. We're going on a cruise. We're doing stuff. She came over here. She didn't just give up. But ultimately, I think the trauma was just too much
But
for her.
the broken heart goes way deep. It's like depression.
Yeah, it was really hard to watch. And then 2 months after my mom passed away, my son-in-law, my 24-year-old son-in-law, died in a tragic accident. And that was just it for me. That was the worst of the worst. Burying Jack and watching my daughter, who's 24 years old, lose the love of her life, her soulmate. So trying to carry her grief and mine and everyone, and my other daughter and his parents, like it was just trauma after trauma after trauma. And so within those 22 months, I lost 12 loved ones. So we're talking friends, spouses. My friends lost their children. It was one, as soon as your head kind of came up, boom, you got hit again and again and again and again. And I've
all
never,
different ones too, right? All different types.
Yes, yes. And not everybody's like older in their 70s or 80s or 100 years old. I mean, these are young 20-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 24-year-olds. Then my friends are losing their spouse, who were my friends. It was a
Was it
lot of
COVID
loss.
based or
None,
none?
none of them. No, none of them.
That's crazy.
Yeah, this was all pre-COVID.
That's crazy stuff.
Mm, yeah,
So, helping your daughters, that's a whole other grief education in its own, I think,
yeah, yeah,
because you feel it as a person, because of the relationship, but then you would also feel it because everything your daughter feels, the
yeah.
mother feels.
Yes. Yes, here my daughter was the carefree, just didn't care what anybody, she was so happy. They loved each other like, I would say they loved each other like my parents did. I saw that. They were that connected. They had been together since they were 16, and and to watch her life shatter, and there was absolutely nothing I could do to fix it.
Yeah.
Obviously, if I could have taken the place of Jack, I would have in a breath, in a heartbeat. So we lost Jack and my daughter. That part of my daughter will never be back. Now, that was 3 years ago. There's a lot of healing in the sense of her trying to navigate life and figure out what she wants to do and where she needs to go. And she has the support of his family, our family, friends. So without that support, though, I don't know where my daughter would be. And that is so tragic. And then my older daughter loved her brother-in-law, you know? It
Like a brother,
was,
probably.
yes, yes, they didn't have a brother, and I didn't have a son. So for me, he was my son. And for my oldest daughter, Bree, that was her brother, and it was just tragic. And it was around Christmas time. So you can imagine now is the time that it brings up all of that.
And that brings up a whole other topic in itself, is Christmas time for
Mm,
us grieving people. It's a special time and it's magical time and it's a happy time, and it's everywhere. It's when you're shopping, you can't even get groceries without realizing it. You like even the cashiers will say, Merry Christmas, or what are you doing for the holidays, or
yeah.
so if you're not doing anything and you're hurting inside and you have grief, and your whole world is collapsing, basically, well, that's what it feels like. That And when they ask you that, you just want to break down
Yeah.
and be a blibbering idiot crying at the cash register, because you don't know what to say. You don't know. Well, because I mean, I've even said, well, I'm not celebrating, because I don't know what to say,
Hmm.
and you don't know what they're going to say. Like, they don't know what to say either back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's just a whole yuckiness.
It is. It is. And we in the Western world, we're just grief illiterate, right? We don't know what to say. We don't know how to say it. We don't want to hurt people. So if it's your loved one and you know what they've gone through, you don't want them to hurt, right? You want to take that away from them, but you
Yeah.
can't. And sometimes we're just super uncomfortable with grief and with pain, and just sitting there with them and just listening. Because the one thing that we want to do is talk about our loved ones. They lived, they are alive in us, and they're never going away. And we want to tell this, we want to tell stories. And so it hurts sometimes for the person listening. But then I always tell people, but we have to remember, this isn't about you. This is about them. This is about what they need. And you're right. Christmas time, I always talk about this. Oh, it's such a merry, festive. Well, it was for me too, until all of these deaths. And
Yeah.
it brought me back to, oh my God. So, right. This isn't the festive season for some people is not so festive. What it does is it just highlights the empty seat at the table. But one of the things as a grief coach and a grief educator is I also
Oh,
talk
by
about
the way, your stuff is all down below, everybody.
uh,
The description box below. And don't forget to smash that like button, everybody, and subscribe to our channel, because we would love to have you. Because if you don't, then you're not going to see any more videos that are going to pop up in your feed. So we want you to be able to see all this stuff like Lisa talks about. So make sure you do that, and make sure you contact her down below in the description box. So just want to make sure everybody
yeah.
knows you're there.
That's great. That's great. And one of the things that we talk about is loss isn't just the loss of loved ones through death. I mean, there are people who have gone through divorce. Now they've lost family members. Where did the children go for Christmas? Maybe there's parental alienation, which is one of these things that I didn't know about until I knew about, right? And then it was like, oh my God, people actually do that. So they alienate the dad, or the mom, and now this parent, what they used to have is no longer, and now they're sitting at Christmas without their children, which they had before. And or loss of a community, like maybe loss of faith, loss of religion, loss of whatever. I say grief is any kind of loss, and your grief is the worst grief there is because it's yours. And so it is so hard to navigate the holiday season. And yet there's that part, at least for me, that says, if you've got family and loved ones alive and you're celebrating, and this is festive for you, celebrate like you've never celebrated before, because we just never know what's going to happen. So I love when people are celebrating, but I'll tell you, when it first happened, especially with Jack, it was the 30th of November, 2019, and his funeral was the 23rd of December. That was literally the worst. We all became hermits. We went into the house and we did not come out.
Yeah.
So that's what we had to do. And what do we have to do? What did I have to do? I had to make sure his family was eating. How do I just be present? It was so hard to navigate. What do you say? What do you do?
Every day too. Like, what do you say
Yeah.
all the time? Not just a friend that calls them up once that month and says, hey,
No.
are you doing okay? But
Yep.
with that, it's a daily thing. Checking
Yes.
on them and making sure that they're, because I think when it gets tough, like, can we talk about, Twitch right now? Because, that just happened this last week. And, a lot of people like me, because I'm one of those crazy empathics, you feel like you knew him.
Mm.
And you feel like he was your friend, even though you had no real contact person to person. But it's a loss. And then you're thinking, well, what does the family feel like? Like, how do those 3 kids cope? Like, I don't even know where to start to cope with that.
Yeah. It's just so tragic, isn't it? And it's you're right. These celebrities, we may not know them, but they're on our TV, they're in the radio, they're on the films, they're on the sports, Kobe Bryant. It's like we feel like we're a part of their life because they're in our living room, right? And also, they're human and we're human. And humanity and empathy is something that we need. And when there is a loss, it's a loss of a human being. And of course, we do start to think, oh my God, these kids, this wife, his parents. It's a collective grief.
Yeah.
And the queen, when the queen died, I mean, she lived a great long life, but the grief and the loss, and I kept looking at the family and thinking, oh, they lost their mom, they lost their grandma, they lost their great grandma. It is about being human and humanity and the loss that, if you've ever experienced it, can at least get a glimpse of the pain. And all you can really do, for especially for those who we don't know, is to
Yeah.
throw out that, that energy and that love. And when someone is saying something negative, or is to combat that. And that's really what we can do. But also we can learn from so many things. Education and knowledge is power. And how would you then support somebody who you do know, whose spouse or dad has passed away? What can you do? It does bring it home for us, doesn't it?
It does. And
Mhm.
Lisa, are there good drugs that these people can recover with? Like, how does the wife get through that? Uh, like how?
Well,
I mean, we don't realize how strong we are, but my gosh,
yeah. I mean, it would be so lovely if there was just some pill that just made it all better, right? And the reality is that grief is such a personal and lonely road. And it's everyone deals with it differently. So there's different modalities that people use to just get up in the morning, to put one foot in front of the other, to breathe in and out. Sometimes you can only do one thing. And I remember saying to my daughter and to her in-laws, like, just one thing. We just need to do one thing. And I remember her going, I did one thing, like I showered, and it was okay, great. Then you don't need to do anything else today, right? It is one of those things where we all have different coping mechanisms, and my hope is that everybody has the support and love of those around them. And perhaps when they're ready, usually right away they're not ready because they have to deal with so many things and navigate funerals and all the stuff that has to go with it. But at some point, get professional help. Some people find, like, I went to grief counseling for a year and a half. I mean, I'm like, I'm paying for that. Like, I needed to figure out anything to keep me going. I also knew enough about trauma, and I know what happens when trauma sits in your body. And I was going to fight it. It may still happen, but I was going to fight not having autoimmune diseases or other ailments, because I know that your body knows the score and it sits in there. So talk therapy, or hypnotherapy, any kind of modality. And
art
that's what I
art
yeah.
therapy and kind of a. My sister just started doing that, and it's really has a lot of benefits.
Yes, yes. So it is about when they're, at first, again, there's so much you just can't even think about a lot of these things. But at some point, you emerge a little bit and you start looking. And I always tell people, be a detective in your life, be an investigator. Look, what do you need to grab at and get in order for you to at least take one step and another step and another step. And like with grief coaching, what I do is usually it's a little bit further down the road, not always, but it's a little bit further down the road. And they start going, right, this is my reality.
Yeah.
Now what? Now what do I do? What do I do with this? Where am I going? Where is my future going? How do I embrace life? How do I fully grieve and fully live at the same time?
It's interesting because I had a girlfriend who was a bank manager, and she lost her daughter who was about 22, and she went back to work after the next week.
Mm.
And I always thought, is that right or wrong? You know, I know every situation and everybody's different, but yeah, I can't see how it can be good.
Yeah,
I move your focus and your mindset, but you're doing is putting it away for a while.
yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. People will respond so differently. And it may be that's what she needed to even survive. Maybe that's what kept her alive and safe. and then who knows, maybe later it hits her and she's like, wow, I need to get some help, and that's what I found when my dad died and I came back to the UK. I shut the curtains, I put my hoodie over my head, and I was like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I need to recover. But after Jack died, I had a lunch or dinner with a friend, and he's like, "Oh my God, do you want to cancel?" I was like, "No, I need people. I needed people. I needed everyone, right? Whoever can." So, and that's complete. Why? I don't know, but I just knew I needed something different. So it
Yeah,
is interesting, and it's hard because we look on the outside in and we try to figure it all out, but until you're in it, it's like maybe that's just what she needed to, yeah,
maybe.
stay alive.
Yeah, maybe she needed some sort of routine
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
kept her day the same.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what's right and wrong, who knows? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. It's so we all deal with everything so incredibly differently. And sometimes it can be really damaging to everybody around us. So, I was trying so hard to like not be that hurting person that hurt people. But what happened is I just saw things differently and I just kind of got rid of toxicity. I just went, bonk, I have no energy time for this. Life is too short and too fragile. Bye, bye. And I remember saying to my therapist, I think I have a black heart or something. She's
you
like,
do
no,
that.
no, no. Like it's setting boundaries. More people need to do that. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm just checking in.
You do that for divorce too. It's like, well, I have friends. Those friends are not worth it anymore. Bing.
Exactly. I went through a divorce a year after we lost Jack. So, um, but it was amicable. It was my decision. He agreed to it. Best decision for both of us. But
Still hard.
still,
Still.
yeah, yes, it's still, 28 years together. And it's like, okay, well, now what? So there's loss, and some people's are really bad. So
Yeah.
we were quite fortunate that we were okay in that sense.
Yeah. Especially after all you've been through.
Yeah,
One
yeah,
thing after another and divorce on top of it. Like,
yeah.
wow, that's
Yes.
craziness.
Yeah.
Uh, what about you had talked about your parents being somewhat um, um, they had everything planned.
Mm,
So that was really, really beneficial for you and your family.
yes.
But you have
So,
seen other places. And
mm,
I talk about this all the time because people that would contact me, my clients, would be sitting beside their mother who's, just passing away. And she's trying to get, well, how do I get her bank accounts? Like, how do I find out where they bank? And how do I get, like, where is their paperwork? And where's this? And my answer is it's too late.
yeah, yeah, yep.
So how do you maneuver through that? Because I wanted to I know it doesn't take the grief away by having plans, but you've experienced it both ways. So I feel that if you have had most of it or a lot of it done, then when something does happen, the grief process is just so incredibly easy.
Mm,
I can't say easy, probably not the right word, but it helps you cope easier. It helps you do that because you don't have obstacles like, oh, the bank won't talk to me, or, like you don't need any more frustrations.
100%. Yeah, you're right. So it doesn't, of course, take away the loss, but what it does is compounds the grief. So now you've got to deal with all this, and you don't even have space to grieve the actual loss. I mean, even if it's done really well, there's still stuff you have to do. And so, but if it's an absolute nightmare, you have no capacity. So I worked for a law firm here in the UK as a practice manager, and they dealt with wills and probate and lasting powers of attorney. And this was years ago. And my parents came to visit. I'm like, right. you need to put my brother, who lived 30 minutes from them, on your bank account so that we can access, you need a lasting powers of attorney. Obviously, they had a will. So you need to set all these things in place. They had life insurance and all that. But it was these things that were critical because I had seen it in the firm where they had done it right and they had not. And the stress level when they have not done it is horrible. And so my mom and dad were like, okay. So when my parents did pass away, it was streamless in that my brother was able to get stuff done. Of course, he had to do all this work and, there was still stuff he had to do, but it was set. He had access to the banks. He could talk to them. He could speak to them. And in that sense, it relieved a lot of his stress.
Yes.
So I was so grateful. And I know my brother is so grateful that my parents did it that way.
Yes, that's for sure. Because then if you know what wishes are for your family members and you're not going to fight as a family either, I'm sure you've seen that.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
no, she wanted this. No, she wanted that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And, my nieces, my daughters, and me, we all went through jewelry and clothes, and they were, playing dress up and, I want this, I don't want this. Yeah. And my mom was always the one that would say, oh, just bag it up and give it to Goodwill. It doesn't matter. It's just stuff, but we took some of the things that it was like, yeah, have that, have that, have that. And that was actually quite a healing time for us to be able to do that. So that was just one of the things. We went through all the millions of photos. So many to where we're like, we don't know these people, sorry, but
it's kind of weird though, looking at a photo that you don't know. And it's like, I wonder what that was about.
Yeah, we did go, what? But we always knew when my mom took the photo because she always cut people's heads off and it was always the wall behind. So we always knew like that was Sally's photo, right? So we were able to have like good laughs. And yeah, who are these people? But then we didn't have time to try to figure that one out. But yeah, it was healing in that sense as well. And we, again, didn't have to worry about all these other things.
Yeah.
And there were so many people that were so supportive coming in, taking care of some of the things with the funeral and the slideshow. And it was just, and we had just done this with my dad 14 months before. So I was getting sick of seeing all those people, no offense, but
yeah,
it's like,
true.
Yeah, giving eulogies.
Do it all again and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It was it was so traumatic that you just kind of were walking along, and I think one of the things, having parents pass away, like that's the way it's supposed to go, right? We're supposed to bury our parents. That's the way it's supposed to happen. You shouldn't be burying your child. You should be burying your parents, right?
Yeah.
But when we even sometimes do that, we can minimize the actual loss, that DNA, that connection. These are your first teachers. These are your mom. This is your mom and dad. So you don't want to minimize the loss of mom and dad either,
Right.
Mhm.
What kind of tips do you feel over Christmas time, over these holidays? And I think there are many throughout the year: Mother's Day, Father's Day, birthdays.
Yeah.
But Christmas is such a big one because, like I said, it's everywhere. It's when you're shopping, you're grocery shopping, you're watching TV. Like it's in your face.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, because everybody deals with things differently, I would say, tap into what it is you feel you need. So sometimes it is about rest and recovery. Sometimes it is about not going to the stores and not listening to Christmas music and putting your, hoodie on and watching Netflix and eating popcorn and chocolate. Like sometimes it's just whatever you need and not feeling guilty about that. Some people have small children where they can't do that. So they're just walking wounded, they're just going through the motions and trying desperately. But, there are things that can be done as far as, your nutrition and hydrating, meditation, yoga, things that can take your cortisol level that's shooting through your body and dropping it down. So there are actual tools and things you can do. Exercise, sleep is key. Whatever you need to do to sleep is going to be a key recovery for you. So again, there are just your practical tools that pretty much everybody talks about and pretty much knows about. But in grief, it's like crying when it hits you, going into the shower and just letting it out. If going into your car, that was my biggest place to like just let it out. I leave work and I cry all the way home, and sometimes when you need rest and recovery, sometimes it's okay to go, nope. Like I just don't want to face this loss right now. Like, no, I don't. And just try to, and so again, it's just some of those are the things that were kind of helpful for me. And then getting rid of toxic people and bringing in the positive people, the people who love and care about you and lift you up and sit with you and support
Take you
you.
out, take you out wherever.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. So maybe it's not a shop, but maybe it's for a walk, or maybe it's, it's something
A
to just
coffee,
get you out.
go on a
Coffee.
cruise, whatever it is.
Whatever it is, spa day, whatever it is to get you out of where you're at and change and reframe and change even just the scenery
Yeah.
sometimes is all you need. But I think it's so important to also understand that sometimes people don't know what they need. We don't, we're in so much trauma and people go, just give me a call, let me know what you need. And I have no idea what I need. Like I need them back alive, but you
Yeah.
can't do that.
Yeah.
So then I always say, then just feed them, like make sure they're eating, do their laundry, like these practical, watch the
Or
children.
to go to a movie or something or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
I had heard in one of my shows as well that I really liked this idea, and I felt it was good for anybody that was suffering, not just with grief, but I think it could count for many things, is when you do find that support group, is to have the support people who call you and just say, instead of how are you today, because it's kind of like when you've hurt yourself or you had a bad day. Remember as a kid and you come home, and the closer you get to home, the more you want to cry,
Yeah.
or the more, or as soon as you see your mom's face, you just burst out in tears. It's kind of like that. And I find that when you can just say, on a scale, like if you guys know what you talk like with each other, if you can just sort of say, what's your scale today
Mm,
from 1 to 10, instead, because that doesn't seem to hurt you to say, oh, I'm a 2 today,
mm,
or I'm a 9 today, or, but it hurts to say, I'm not good today.
mm.
That really
Yeah.
hurts to say it out loud.
Mm,
So I
yeah.
found, by saying, I'm a 2 today,
Mm,
then the person kind of knows by that, just, okay, I'll walk. What can I bring by your favorite, dinner or lunch,
mm.
because then it gives you an idea of what they're going through that day.
Yeah, that's really good. And because sometimes they don't feel like they can express. And sometimes there just are there are no words to describe the actual pain because it's so deep that it's so hard to know how to even express it. I don't, it's the worst ever. I mean, I don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's like with your mom. Did she ever talk about the hurt
With
that
losing my dad.
what she was going through?
Yeah, so yes, she did. I mean, we were close, but we became even closer because I lived there and we would have times where we got to go away and my brother would come and stay with my dad or, so she had lost her dad suddenly when she was 21 years old and my brother was only 3 months old. And then she lost her mom and she lost her sister. So my mom lost her entire immediate family before she was 45. And she said, by far, this is the worst loss I've ever had in my whole life. So my mom had these losses, and I don't know that she was great at expressing all of those losses. So she was quite an emotional, loving, everybody called her Mary Poppins. She really was like the most encouraging human on the planet, I'm pretty sure. Um, and and yet with my dad, it was just when she said, "This is by far the worst," I thought, "Well, yeah, I can see." And my mom was not an overweight individual, but she didn't really have much to lose, and she just lost a lot of weight. She was very thin, she wasn't eating. So it was about trying to take care of my mom and ensure she was having some nutrients and just it was, so you're caring for both, really.
Yeah, it's a
Mm.
struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and very frustrating because you want to be there, but you don't want to be in their face either. So,
Yeah, yeah, and because my dad had a brain tumor, um, his personality started to change. We're very fortunate because he wasn't really too bad for a long time, but obviously we could manage with pain, but his personality would change and he would lash out and he was angry. And there was things that were not my dad, it was his disease. And it was hard because it would be more lashed out at my mom. And so it was to mom, it's his disease, it's not you, it's not. So yeah, just it was so hurtful. And she's like, I know, but it cut, so it was really difficult. It was definitely a difficult thing, but I have a best friend since I was 7 years old, Krista, and she was in Seattle with me. And she was my rock,
oh,
she was
nice.
my rock.
So that's really important to find
It
those
is.
individuals.
Yes. Yes. 100%. And I was very fortunate with having some friends and her. She was and is and always has been my rock.
Yeah.
Mm.
What do you think for those people that don't have their crap together and something does happen, whether it's a sickness and it's, kind of a shorter term kind of thing, or a sudden death, like Kobe's and Twitch, you got to have your stuff together.
Yes. Do it now. Do it now. So what happened for me, even though I was in the law firm, I had a will, but of course I was married at the time, so it was a joint will. Then as soon as I separated, I had my own will. And yeah, I was like, life insurance, lasting powers of attorney, everything's written out because I don't know if I'm going to get hit by a bus or whatever's going to happen. And it just opens your eyes when you get the sudden deaths. It's like, oh my God, I have to make sure that my children don't have the issues that some people have. So I would say do it now. Like do not wait. Don't think you're going to live until you're 95 or 99 years of age. Do it now. Act like tomorrow is your last day.
Yeah.
That's the urgency. I know it doesn't feel great, but it is the reality. So,
Well, it is. And especially now, like
mm,
I tell people, even if it's not thinking of yourself as dying, I mean, we could have a hurricane,
yeah.
a tornado, we could have a storm. We had floods last year in this Vancouver, BC area, and it took out highways and people were killed on the highway.
Mm,
Just pushed them right off like a landslide. Just it
mm,
was so much water that it just took them away. And people lost whole families.
wow.
Like I don't know how to tell people to be better prepared any easier than saying just, and I think people don't do it because they don't really know what they need to do.
Mm, yeah.
And I don't think any of us really know what's going to happen. We don't.
Mm,
It could be literally anything.
yep. Yep.
But that's why I put what I did together so that it would help people to be better prepared for anything.
100%.
a wildfire, even, just
Mm-hmm.
year after. But I just find it so difficult with the grieving process because you have a, I always say you lose your mind. It's like your
Mm.
brain disappears. It
Yeah.
like floats away. I literally sometimes can see my brain floating away. And I'm like,
Yeah,
uh,
that's
uh,
true.
I'm trying to grab it. It's like, come back, come back. Because it's like your brain gets full and you can't
Yeah.
take any more in.
Yeah, they call
And
it grief brain. It is. It is what it
it's,
is. It's like a fog. It's
yeah.
not. Yeah,
And it's
100%.
the worst time when the funeral home is saying, asking you literally 1,000 questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I
and,
know.
and it's like, I don't want to answer anything. I don't want to even talk. Like my
Mhm.
brain is full.
Yes, exactly. And these are the things that having either a support person, somebody with you who, yes, they're grieving with you, but they may not be in the thick of it. It might not be their parent or their spouse, but they're your best friend, or they're the somebody who has those ears to hear. Like, right, my brain isn't working, it's not functioning. I don't know what's being said to me because I literally can't take anything in. Can you come and listen
Yeah.
and catch anything? Because it's all going to go gone. And I
Yeah.
think that's where a support, not everybody has that.
No.
But if you do, hold on to that and be that for each other, because that is crucial. I really do believe that we're not meant to do this life alone. And even though grief is a lonely road, you should not be doing it alone. It's so
No.
hard. It's so difficult. And I think that that is one of the things that you find the support in wherever that is: a book, a Facebook group, a podcast, anything, a coach, a counselor, whatever you need, that support to get you through 100%. And I honestly do believe you're right. Like, act as if tomorrow is your last day. And
Yeah.
if you don't know what you need to do, contact yourself, find out what you need to do and do it. You could live to where you're 150, but you don't
Yeah.
know.
You don't know. And
Mm-mm.
and a lot of times in that 150 years, you've had sort of lots of things happen. You could have lost your house, or you could have lost um, your passport, even like that. Those are all tragic things when you're in the thick of things, and
Totally.
standing there in another country and you've lost your passport.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just talk about the little things, but the big things as well. And
Mm.
if you can take away that yuckiness at all, especially
Mm-hmm.
especially now with all these weird things in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. We need to be prepared. And I think when you're prepared, that actually, even though it's not a comfortable thing, once you're done and you have prepared, that just eases, that just takes that burden is just lifted now. I'm like, my girls are taken care of now. If something happens to me, burden ease, it's lifted.
Yeah. Did you ever talk about, or did you notice your daughter? Because I talk about this in my show sometimes. Because part of the backup plan is called the treasure box, where I work with clients and people that want to put things together over the years so that they're there when they pass away, kind of leaving your legacy. It could be recipes or smells or poetry or your handwriting or video, or we talk about different fun things that we could come up with. But did your daughter find anything that she grabbed onto that is part of Jack?
Yeah, so much. So she's got photos all over still. Um, they lived together for years, and so there's all these places that they traveled. She at first was just holding and sleeping with his hoodie and just to smell him. And one of the things that, I don't know if you ever saw that film, P.S. I Love You, but oh, that was my daughter's life. I didn't realize that I would be then years later watching my daughter. So Jack, before he passed away, was so excited because he had made something for her.
Oh,
And we had moved her from where she was living with him, moved them out of the apartment and back into his family's home at the 2 hours away. But I knew that there was this gift that was being made and that was coming, but she didn't live there anymore. So she gets this postage thing that said, and we can't redirect it. Anyway, long story short, we can't redirect this gift. But I was like, get in the car. I said, get in the car. We're going down there. We have to get this. I mean, we're not going to let it be shipped back to where it was sent. And then she opened it up, and it was a 2019 photo album book that he created of their travels and of their life together. And he never did stuff like that. And then the end was with my mom, because she had just lost my mom. And he's like, oh, you're so much like honey, which is what they called my mom. And I mean, I had to take it out of the box and package it up and put it in wrap it up for her. I was a mess. I was a mess. So she has she has loads of his stuff. His parents do as well. I think it's so, so important. It's so healing. But
yeah.
as somebody on the outside, it was so traumatic. I
Yeah.
was so sad.
Imagine that like it's like he planned it, you know?
Yeah, I know. It was so crazy. And I knew I had to get her in the car and we had to drive down, even though it was going to be a 4.5 hour. Didn't matter. I'd go to the ends of the earth.
I know, but a
And
whole lot of
wow.
during that trip.
Yeah, it's so weird going back and thinking about it. This is 3 years ago. It feels like it was yesterday, and it feels like it was forever ago.
Yeah, it
And
does.
that's grief. That's grief.
And I talk about, smells and seeing their handwriting, and there's
Yes.
just something tangible about it. And when I went to give insurance checks to families, and I always found it very interesting because when you went to their home, it was very interesting to see some people would have a shrine set up and lots of photos and a
Yeah.
place where they would go to and make special all every month kind of thing. Their bedroom would be exactly how they left it. And then there was other people that wanted to move right away. They
Hmm.
couldn't stay there. They didn't want to have even go back there. They didn't. Yeah. So it's funny what happens. And I bet if I could ask 100 people before something happens, it would never be the same to what
Mm,
would actually happen when it happens.
yeah,
Does that make
absolutely.
sense?
Yeah, and it's interesting because after my dad died, I couldn't look at photos. I couldn't look at photos of Jack. I just couldn't. And then you'd go to Alexa's, my daughter's, and it was just like a shrine of photos of them. And I just, every
Yeah.
time I look, I couldn't look directly at it, but I knew that my daughter needed and needs that. That is healing to her. Now there's less photos of him, but there's still photos of him.
Yeah.
And I knew she needed that. So no matter what my pain was, I had to suck it up because that was about her and what she
Yeah.
needed. And then now I can look at photos of my parents and I smile, and I look at photos of Jack and I'm still really, really traumatized. Yeah, I look at him and it stood for me. So
For
again,
me
it's
too.
however you have to grieve
Right.
is
And
your
it could
grief.
change, I guess, every month. All of a
Yeah,
sudden you might be able to look at them, but you just don't know when you're going to get to that point, I guess.
exactly. There's no time limit. And I think one of the things that I tell people that we need to not do. So there's all these to-dos, things you can do. Again, like we said, help make sure they're eating, sleeping, given that like 1 through 10 number. But the other of the don'ts is, some people go, oh, after a year, it'll get better after the first year, the anniversary. Lies.
Oh, no.
Lies. Stop it. Stop. Don't tell people there's a time limit. There's no time limit to grief. They've loved, and that person is in there. That is their life. So because we love is the reason why we grieve. So that doesn't go away. And we stop saying time heals all wounds. It just doesn't. This is a wound that doesn't heal in that sense. What I say to clients, we learn to create a life of passion and purpose around our pain. We take it with us. We take them with us, and we can still fully live and fully grieve and live a life of hope and passion and purpose and fun and enjoyment. We can have all of that. And yet that is still a pain that we just learn to create a life around it. It doesn't go away.
No,
So,
no, and unless you've experienced it, I don't think anyone could fully understand it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What I am enjoying so much to talk to you about this. I mean, we could talk about it forever because there's so many different types of grief. You know, for us empathics who feel that we hurt with Twitch passing away recently, or we've lost a friend, or even a pet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you love, and
Yes,
every time you love, grief hits you in the face.
it does. It is, because that's an expression of, I mean, it is because we love. I'm actually starting a podcast in the new year, and I was thinking, what do I name it? It's that, because we love, because that is what it is. And so any type of loss, so that's what it's going to be called, because we love, because it is true. That is, it hits you in the face. You're right. And losing any type of
All different.
relationships, anything. Yep. Yep.
Somebody at work. I mean, it's just, yeah, it
Mm.
just hits you in so many different ways that you don't realize, you know, how it hits you, and
Yes.
how it can hit you later on in years, like some smell, or you hear
Yes.
a song or something, or you're going grocery shopping. It's weird how something just hits you.
Yes. And that's why time heals all wounds. You'll be better after a year or two. It then what happens is, what if people hear that and that's what their expectation is, and 3 years down the road, they're in a grocery store and someone walks by that looks like them, or they get that whiff of the perfume, and then they're bam, they're hit, and they're thinking, well, why am I reacting this way? It was 5 years ago, 20 years ago, because there is no time limit.
Yeah, and I wonder where that saying came from, because it makes no sense.
I have no idea, but people have used it a lot, and I or the first anniversary is the worst, and I'm like, in my experience for myself, my family, my clients, they're almost surprised that the second, third year, fourth year is, because it's even that far along that they haven't seen, touched, hugged, kissed their loved ones for years.
Yeah.
So it's almost like that is that, like, the shock is worn off, and now it's just this long journey of not hearing their voice and being with them.
And I think it's a challenge, like every holiday time when you're
Mm,
grieving, because you can't say, well, my one last year was better than this year, or
yeah.
it could be. Like,
Mm,
I just find each one very different and unique, because
yeah.
you're doing different things and you're with different people. So,
Mhm.
but you still have the same pain.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's like you really need to go deep inside and find out what heals you, what
Yeah.
feels good, so that
Yes.
you can bring more of that around you
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. I
without
agree.
alcohol.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some things that, are maybe not as healing.
No, well, people think they are, just get
Hmm.
drunk, or and you just cover up the pain.
Yes.
All you're doing is covering it up. So,
Yeah. Yep.
uh,
It is. It is. It's like we go to things that will, because we would rather have pleasure than pain. So we'll go to the pleasure, what we think is pleasure. Of course, as we know, alcohol is a depressant. So that doesn't actually help the situation. gambling or, shopping or overeating or all these things. We may have moments where we just are trying to survive. It's when it becomes long term that it can
Yeah,
become a real problem.
exactly. Well, we could talk about this forever. So many different types of grief and so many feelings. And it was a pleasure to have you come on the show today. What kind of last message would you like to give the listeners?
I think that one of the main things is that I said before is your grief is the worst grief because it's yours. There's also hope. There is healing. There is hope that you can create a life of that passion and purpose around your pain. There is. It's not easy, but it is actually possible.
Oh, that sounds beautiful. And to know that it is possible when you're in it, it's very, very hard and very
Yeah,
dark, and very lonely, and yeah.
very.
And anybody out there listening and struggling right now, we send our love to you. And hopefully this video has helped you somewhat, or if you know someone that it could help, please share it with those that you love, because Lisa had some great tips for us today and some great ideas to help us come out of our shell. I like to think of it as a shell because it's not so dark and dreary,
Mhm.
because it is a dark and dreary feeling. So if I feel like, well, I'm just in my shell today, or I need to go in my shell today, it just sounds like it's okay.
Mhm.
It's
For
okay.
sure.
But if you're going to say, oh, I have to, cover myself up and hide somewhere in a dungeon, or because that's what you feel like you need to do. It's just not, doesn't sound so great, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, maybe that's because I'm like a mermaid or something. Go my swim with the other fishies.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa, for coming on. I really appreciated your tips and tricks for all those wonderful people out there. I'll probably have you come back on in 2023, and I look forward to that, because I'm sure you'll have experienced more things with other clients by then.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, thanks so much for having me. I absolutely enjoyed it. And for sure, I'd love to come back.
Oh, that'd be awesome. And thank you. We are not Superman, everybody. We think we are, but we act like we are because nothing's going to happen. Have you heard that before? But as you know, that's far from the truth, because something will happen. We don't know what, and we don't know when. We can look at the last 5 years in the world around us, and, shootings in the schools and the streets, and work accidents and car accidents and overdoses and the pandemic. I mean, the list goes on and on. Natural disasters and floods and hurricanes. Don't forget to smash that like button. For anybody out there, I want to send you my love. Subscribe to our channel. And if you are thinking about that someone special right now listening to the show, please reach out to them today, because you don't know what tomorrow will bring. And you don't know how many birthdays you have left, and you don't know what tomorrow might bring. So that being said, I always end our show with Carol Burnett. I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, comes the time we have to say so long. So long, everybody. I send lots of love. Expect the unexpected. Be kind and stay safe. And thank you, Lisa, for coming on our show today. You're welcome. Bye for now. Bye, everybody.